Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
We Are Back. Now, you would have not noticed any disruption in service to the No Name Music Cast, but we've taken a few weeks off. We had holidays or vacations, depending on where you live in the world, and we had other things going on, but we're here back again recording. It's June the 19th today, Juneteenth for our friends in the United States, but we are recording and back.
And we had probably in a while, I would say 10, the most I've seen in a while, because I got the email too, our most downloads last week.
Yeah, we had an email from Buzzsprout, the people who publish our podcast, and it's the most downloads we've had in a week in a long time. So if you're listening to this, thank you so much for listening.
And spread it with your friends. I think that's what's happening. People who've been on the show and different things like that, you know what I mean, said they've been spreading it around. And so we're getting a bigger outreach.
Yeah, well, there we are. And we've got some other guests that are planned. So we're hoping to spread the word of the No Name Music Cast.
Of course.
Well, fantastic. So at the very beginning of the show, I believe Joy has got a music news item or items for us.
It is one item, even though I was talking to Tim before the episode and I went, I have one bit of music knowledge. I went, wait, no, that's not what I meant. Anyway, so my music news is something I think Tim has probably been seeing. He would be someone who would be following this closely. It is Sony Music reportedly in talks to buy Queen's music catalog for $1 billion.
Yeah, this is something that's been bubbling around for a while, sort of unofficially. And I think what it is I think it's Brian May and Roger Taylor just getting their house in order because, you know, both of those gentlemen are in their 70s. Brian May's in his late 70s. And we hope that both of those chaps live for a good long time yet. But, you know, they're older and they're trying to get their affairs in order. And obviously, Brian May in particular is very passionate about charities and other things that he's involved with. So he probably wants to work out the money that he's going to get from the Queen catalog and his, you know, his everything that he's created in his life is given to the things that's important to him while he's still with us.
Exactly. So I think we kind of talked about this with something that was, you know, bubbling in the stratosphere at some point. Me and Tim have discussed this, but according to Bloomberg today, that it's officially they're working with an investor. So it does look like it is going to go through. Now, Sony also owns, like, I think they recently acquired 50% of Michael Jackson's catalog too. Mm-hmm. So, and his latest estate. I mean, Sony's going to be making, I mean, they're getting some of the biggest people, Tim. They really are. Because don't they also have like Neil Diamond? We've talked Neil Youngjoy. That was the word I was looking for. I don't know anybody owns Neil Diamond's catalog. There's like 2 songs. Bob Dylan, I think, is owned by Sony as well. So
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, they're gonna be quite the publishing powerhouse. I mean, this is how it used to be back in the 60s, because that's how the Beatles originally lost all their publishing rights. You know, you was famous, you sold a load of records, and you made a load of money. And the thought is that, you know, your catalog wasn't ever going to be worth anything. So, you know, in 1967, and someone says, "Oh, I'll give you £1 million for your catalog." You're like, "Great, let's cash it in." But of course, you didn't know 50 years after the fact, people are still going to want that. And licensing and commercials and all the stuff. So it's almost going back to that model where you've got these big companies that own all this publishing.
Well, and I think that it's just something that's easy to do. Like Tim said, we had said they are getting older, like just to make sure everything's kind of settled. And it's kind of funny. We always know that famous story about how Paul McCartney literally told Michael Jackson, "Oh, you want to make some money? Sell some of your records." Remember? But that's like a famous story. And then it was like, he sold, you know what I mean? He sold off a bunch of stuff and stuff that, like, even apparently Michael Jackson owned some of the Beatles and sold theirs too. And Paul McCartney was like, "Well, I didn't mean mine."
Yeah,
but there's like a famous story.
Yeah, they were recording Thriller together.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And then Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson in downtime, Paul McCartney gave him the piece of advice: you need to get into music publishing. Music publishing is where the money is made in music. And at the time, the Beatles catalog was not completely owned by Paul McCartney or, you know, that Apple and all that kind of, not Apple, the computer company, Apple Core, the record label. And so that came up in an auction. And of course, Michael Jackson outbid Paul McCartney and ended up owning his songs, and Paul McCartney was a little sour about that, as you would imagine.
Yeah, because it was his advice. I remember my mom, I'm pretty sure, is the one who first told me that story, but I was young. It was pretty common knowledge, I think, that Paul McCartney spoke out about it, but you guys have never heard that. That's kind of where I think And he said, and then I think his exact words were Michael told Michael's, if you buy it and then you're hard up for money or you need to make quick money, it's a simple way. You know what I mean? To like easily make some money.
Sure.
So there you go, guys. So I think it is official, though. Sony is going to get the Queen catalog.
Yeah, I mean, really, for the average consumer, it doesn't really make a lot of difference. But what it does mean is that every commercial, every film is going to have that stuff licensed in it. And they're going to try and monetize it because they're going to own all the imagery. They're going to own everything to do with the Queen brand.
That's what happened with the Beatles is a good example of this. And some people may remember this. The Beatles catalog had been held pretty close for a while, and then it finally got sold off. And if you'd ever paid attention, if you were like video games and commercials and stuff like that, there wasn't a lot of Beatles music in it. As soon as it got sold off, Tim, Beatles rock band was coming out. Beatles this was coming out, like everything right and left. So yeah, that's where it comes from. You'll see a lot of Queen, but I feel like Queen is one of those bands that they resurge every 5 years anyway. So what's the difference?
Yeah, I mean, it's the Queen has become the new Beatles, if you will, because, you've got the legendary Beatles and everybody knows who the Beatles are and they sort of have this evergreen appeal. And then, they're still around and people still love the Beatles and they're still this huge name. But sort of Queen sort of almost took over from that, becoming this kind of evergreen thing that everybody loves.
Larger than life kind of thing.
Larger than life. And they were going out with Adam Lambert as a singer and Queen music was everywhere. And you had that Bohemian Rhapsody film. And they've sort of begun to fill that gap for people who are a little bit older who weren't necessarily around when the Beatles were out the first time.
I could agree with you on that. And so it wouldn't surprise me again, though. I feel like it just all comes full circle. We'll see another resurgence of them. And I don't know that I feel like they've become cool again, Tim, if that makes sense. Like, it's like they've become that, like, it's cool to like the Beatles again. And it's cool to like Queen again, if that makes sense. And that seems to come full circle a lot.
It does. And one other thing, this isn't actually a music news item, but it does tie into what you were saying. So with Queen's organization and Queen Productions and Duck Productions and all those kind of Queen companies are in talks to sell to Sony for $1 billion. One interesting thing, Brian May has a company called Brian May Guitars, and they make mid-grade copies of Brian May's famous handmade guitar, and they sell for $800-900 US, or about 650-700 pounds in the UK. And they are not terribly accurate, but they are, a mid-grade guitar. And if you want something that sounds and looks like Brian May's guitar, you buy one of those. And then there's a guy called Andrew Guyton who will make you a super accurate authorized thing, but they're like $15,000 if you want one of those. So the mid-grade one is the one that the most people would buy. But there were some reports also in the last couple of weeks where Brian May has signed with Gibson Guitars.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I wonder again. He's sort of wrapping up his affairs. Does he want to be sort of involved with a guitar manufacturer or guitar organization in his name, or is he now at the point where again, planning for his future and planning for being older? Let's just hand this whole thing over to Gibson and let them carry on the thing, and then maybe Brian May Guitars will go away. I don't know. It's funny that that's come up at the same time as this other thing has come up.
Well, and it could be that if he knows, and me and Ted hate to say this, that he is getting older and he wants to make sure his legacy keeps going with guitars, he trusts Gibson. You know what I mean, Tim?
Sure.
Whereas that's an easy thing because he's not going to be at the head of it anymore.
Yeah, he's getting his affairs in order.
Well, there we go. And just so you know, they did say in this article, like Tim said, in recent years, there has been a frenzy to acquire music catalogs. It's been a big thing recently. And a lot of private equity companies like Blackstone have been competing for the deals. And really all it comes against like traditional music companies. Like Blackstone isn't a traditional music company, but they're even competing for it. And they're just private equity. And the goal really is just to be able to have music that you play films, radio, TV show, video games, things like that.
Yeah, because selling the music outside of a niche interest like vinyl, which really is a few $1 million a year. It's a rounding error on a spreadsheet. It's nothing. I mean, people talk about how great it is that record shops are open and people are buying vinyl and stuff, but it is such a small niche market, really. And like we say, the money is made in music publishing. It's licensing for video games, licensing for films, licensing for commercials. They're not making any money really out of pressing records or selling CDs or streaming or anything. That's just it's nothing in comparison.
Well, there you go, Tim. I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, so this sort of ties back to what you was originally talking about.
Okay.
Paul McCartney. Paul
Oh yeah, I heard of that
McCartney.
guy.
Yeah, I believe was he 82
Yeah.
recently?
Yeah.
So Paul McCartney, the healthy, young, and vibrant Paul McCartney, has just announced an extension to his tour.
He's never going to stop touring. He's just going to fall off the stage one day.
He'll be like Les Paul. He'll be 90 years old, and then it'll be very quick, and then there'll be no Paul. But we don't want to think about that.
Fair enough.
But Paul McCartney, so he was already touring South America in October and November. But now he's around. He's announced European dates.
I saw that. People were excited.
Yeah, so he is going to be in London. He's going to be in Manchester. He's going to be in Madrid, in Spain. He's going to be in France. I mean,
How expensive do you think those tickets are going to be, Tim?
well, I was looking on Threads today, which is my social media
Of choice.
these days, absolutely. And people were saying that for the London dates, because he's at the O2, which used to be called the Millennium Dome, if you remember it as being that, but that's a big concert venue, the O2. And people were saying that the tickets were around £150, which
Wow.
which is a lot of money, especially if there's two of you and you pay all those ridiculous fees. However, compared to say like a Taylor Swift, where people are paying five, six, seven, eight, $900 a pop, I mean, £150, which equates to about $180, $190 US, is probably reasonable at this point.
I mean, Billy Joel wanted $500 for one of his tickets. You know what I mean, Tim? Like 150 to see Paul McCartney for me would be, I think that would be something I would put $150 towards.
Yeah, I
Well
saw.
worth it.
Yeah, I wonder how much I paid to see Paul McCartney because I saw him about 10 years ago in Greensboro. Paul McCartney. I mean, I have everything here in my
Because
archives.
Tim's got like his own like mini server over there with everything of his life.
Well, would you look at this? So I saw Paul McCartney in 2014.
Okay.
I saw him on October the 30th, 2014 at the Greensboro Coliseum.
Halloween.
Yep. And I got two tickets. They were terrible tickets. They were right in the very back, but I was there seeing Paul McCartney. And I actually ended up getting them from StubHub because it's the only place I could get them from. And for two tickets, we paid $239.
Not that far off for what you paid. Well, like you said, it depends on what all those fees add up at the end. There's like fees for this, fees for that. Take your soul.
this was the total, $239 for two tickets. And I mean that's a little while ago, but at the same time, it was not super expensive in the grand scheme of things.
That I could see, and it's kind of like, no offense to like Madonna or one of these other artists we talk about with outrageous ticket prices. There's some people I can justify that with, and Paul McCartney is one of those people for me. I'm going to spend a little bit more money to see him.
Yeah, you're going to see Paul because he's an icon, and he's also older, and you don't know how long he's going to be doing that for. So you want to, if you've never seen Paul, you want to see Paul McCartney.
Exactly. So I think that that's not bad. I was expecting you to say a lot higher of a number.
No, I think if we'd have got something super near the front, it would have been more expensive. But it was hard to find tickets for Paul McCartney. I didn't find out until the very last minute, and then it's the only place I could get them from. And it's like, I have seen Paul. I've seen both the living Beatles now.
Well, there you go. Because I mean, the other one was just in Roanoke, right?
Yeah, when I saw Ringo, that was in Roanoke, and it was at the Roanoke Civic Center, and they sort of it's like a big arena, a Wembley Arena style venue, but they sort of cut it halfway and had the stage halfway back. So where we sat, the seats were great.
That's what they did with Elton John. It wasn't a big arena, but it cuts the arena in half.
Yeah.
And if you're unlucky and you get the ticket right towards the side where they cut it in half, you're not seeing anything.
No, but we were very lucky in that respect.
All right. So what else do you have for us, sir?
All right. I have one other music news item.
Okay.
So Sammy Hagar, the Red Rocker, he was originally the singer in Van Halen, not the original singer in Van Halen, but he was the sort of in the 80s onward. He was the singer in Van Halen. He's had a very successful solo career, and he was in the band Montrose as well. And, he's sort of taken over from that beach lifestyle world that Jimmy Buffett left behind.
Fair. I mean, just he does have his like own alcohol. You see him like playing guitars on the beach. It makes sense.
Yeah. He originally launched the Cabo Wabo tequila, and then that
Yep.
brand got bought by somebody else. He now has one called El Santos or something like that, and he does something with Guy Fieri. But that sort of beach bum lifestyle, it seems to have been handed over to Sammy to carry on the torch from where Jimmy Buffett left over.
Fair enough.
So this year he will be 77, and for the last number of years he's been having a birthday bash. Now he has a club in Cabo San Lucas in Mexico called the Cabo Wabo, which is where
Of course it is.
yeah, which is where the tequila brand name came from. And every year he plays there and has a birthday bash, and it's like him and his band, and then it's like friends show up, and it's like, oh wow, blah blah blah's here, and it's a whole thing. I'd always wanted to go to it, but being in Mexico, it was unlikely I was going to get to the Cabo Wabo, and it's in such high demand. There's actually like a lottery system now to see if you can get a ticket for it.
Oh, wow.
But this year, he's decided to do things a little bit different for his 77th birthday. He's decided to do 2 nights in Cabo like he normally does, and he's decided to do 2 nights in Vegas.
Are you going to try to go, Tim?
Well, that's what I'd like to exclusively reveal. So in October, it's my birthday, and I'm going to go to Vegas. In fact, I've already booked it. I booked the flights and booked the hotel. We're going to Vegas.
Just do it.
And I didn't even know this birthday bash thing was happening until I was looking in the evil Ticketmaster to see what gigs were happening when I was there. And then I noticed Sammy's birthday bash, and it hadn't actually gone on pre-sale yet. So yesterday, the pre-sales went on sale at 1 p.m. And I was sitting in my office, and my manager's super cool and loves music. And I told him what I was going to do. And I said, I'm going to shut my door, no distractions, and I'm going to wait for the pre-sale. He said, yeah, go and get it. So I shut the door, and I'm sitting there with the Ticketmaster. I'm in the lobby, and then it goes, boom, screen. And then it was like, it's only a small club arena. It holds about 2,000 people.
So you had to act quick.
Yeah. And there was some tickets near the front, and I had 2 which were in like the 3rd row, and I went click, click. And by the time I went to go buy, they disappeared. I was like, dang it. So I clicked 2 others, which were like maybe 2 rows behind. I went click, click, buy. And I'm going to go to the Sammy Hagar birthday bash.
Yay! It's official. That's fun. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What venue is it?
It's at the Palms.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just curious.
Yeah, it's at the Pearl at the Palms Casino. And the Palms used to be the casino which had the Playboy thing in there. If you've ever seen any of those, what was that Playboy Bunny reality show with Holly Madison and all that stuff going on?
I know what you're talking about. I mean, it was just like the Playboy Mansion.
Yeah, well, no, there was one that was sort of based in Vegas. Hannah got super into it for 5 minutes. It was the worst kind of trashy reality show, but for some reason she really got into it. But anyhow, whatever.
I know who Holly Madison is. I know that much. So
yeah, and then a lot of it was based in the Palms, because the Palms is where the famous Playboy Club in Vegas was. And then during the COVID, they closed down because they couldn't make it, etc. And then it reopened a little while ago, and I think the Playboy Club has gone, and it's different ownership and different everything.
The most random TV show for me to imagine Hannah of all people watching.
You have no idea what she watches.
I will say I have felt down some guilty pleasure TV shows. The ones for me are the ones where I ended up watching the gypsies getting married. And like on TLC, you know what I'm talking about, Tim, like the gypsy wedding one. Those are probably the trashiest. And the ones in the UK are by far worse than the gypsies in America. They're even worse. And I didn't realize that there was so much hate towards, as they call themselves, travelers. I think the word gypsy is bad now. I don't know, guys. Don't come for me, internet. I don't know enough about their culture. But the travelers in the UK have a lot of animosity towards them.
Yeah, I would say that for a lot of people are not very kind to traveling people.
Weird. I guess I never really thought about it. Well, there you go, guys. That was my guilty pleasure TV show. I watched a lot of gypsy weddings, which they take very seriously.
Well, I would say I wouldn't use the term guilty pleasure, because if you like it, you like it.
But it was my trashy TV channel.
You are talking to the person who watched WWF SummerSlam 88 today. So,
yeah, that's true. Tim surprises me all the time with the wrestling, so I guess I can't be too surprised about Hannah watching reality TV. Well, you never know a person.
Hannah says I just like redneck things, i.e., wrestling, monster trucks, tractor pulls, and stuff. She said,
I feel like it's. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, she's like, how do you know about this? Why do you like this? Like, just because I do.
I feel like it's because it's like Americana in a way, I guess. Sadly, maybe I don't know, but like maybe you just didn't have it in the UK, so now you're filling all your cup up with it, Tim. I'm not sure.
Well, I used to like it before I moved. I mean, I used to
And then
love
you're
wrestling
just,
when I was a
I
kid. I
don't,
always loved monster trucks. I don't know. It's just, I'm of the opinion I should have been born here because everything about US culture feels a lot more natural to me. And I never felt super at home in England, if I'm being honest with you.
Interesting. Well, now you guys know if you need to buy Tim a quick birthday gift. You have some ideas now. He really loves a monster truck setup that he could put on his desk and run over his keyboard with at work.
Maybe I already have Bigfoot on my desk, just saying.
Well, then you could put Bigfoot in the truck, Tim, and he could run over things.
There we are. Or maybe a grave digger or something. There's many of them.
I only know about Gravedigger because my friend Molly, who was on the show's mom does cakes, like makes wedding cakes and different things like that. And when I was younger, she was doing a groomsman cake where like they groom picks like something, you know what I mean, they want. And it was Gravedigger when I watched her make a Gravedigger cake. Other than that, I would never have heard of those words ever in my life.
One of my ambitions is to go to Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina, which is the home of Digger's Den, which is where Gravedigger is based.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. All right, I guess we should actually talk about music. What's the podcast topic today?
Okay, so this week it is my topic. And I was thinking about this. You know, we've been away for a few weeks. So some things have gone on and we've had vacation stroke holidays, depending where you are. And I thought, you know, we're back. So I thought, let's talk about back songs, i.e. songs with back in the title.
I see where you're going with this. Are any of these songs a stretch or are they pretty literal?
No, all of them are just the song title and all of them have the words back in it. Sometimes when I do these word association game episodes, sometimes it's a little bit of a stretch, but I put back in my music library and it was like pages upon pages upon pages. So I figured there's enough to get us through this episode.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so the first one I'm going to talk about, this is by Huey Lewis in the News. This is from that film that you may have seen from the 80s called Back to the Future, but that's not what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the song Back in Time.
I mean, it's a classic Huey Lewis in the News song. I will say, I kind of like, I find it, I literally thought instantly when you started doing this, that this was going to be one of the songs up there. I was like, he's got to mention Huey Lewis in the News. I have another one that's in mind, and I'll be curious to see if you get there. We'll find out in a minute. But you're a big fan of Back to the Future, right?
Yeah, I really love Back to the Future, the first one.
Yeah.
And I like the second one. The third one I've seen like twice, and it's completely stretching the concept. But certainly the first one is fantastic. And I've been lucky enough to go to Universal Studios Hollywood a few times. And in the back lot, I enjoyed back lot. They take you, they have a tour. And one place they take you is Courthouse Square. And Courthouse Square is like a little, as the name suggests, it's like a little like town, old American type town type thing. And there's been so many TV shows and films filmed in Courthouse Square. Lots of Knight Rider episodes are in Courthouse Square. A-Team episodes are in Courthouse Square. But the most famous thing probably filmed there is the Back to the Future clock tower, and where, you know, he gets a DeLorean up to 88 and the lightning bolt and all that kind of stuff. And they actually take you around there. And I've got a photograph of what is it doesn't have the clock on it when I went there. You know, they dress it depending on what they're filming. But I've actually been there in at the clock tower in Courthouse Square.
Now, here's the song Back in Time, though, is used in the credits, right?
Yeah. It's not like the opening titles. Yes, it's just the credit scene at the end.
I didn't think it was used in any other place I mean, I do get that. Gonna get back in time, like stuck in my head periodically. It's a pretty catchy song.
Yeah. The main song by Huey Lewis in the News is used. The Power of Love is used in the film several times. But yeah, Back in Time is used at the end.
Well, now Power of Love will be in my head. Thanks, Tim. I hadn't even thought about that too. You said it. There
you go. I did find out an interesting fact, though. Interesting me fact about Back to the Future. When they made Back to the Future 1, as I said, I've had a few weeks off, so I've been doing a lot of YouTubing things. When they made Back to the Future 1, they had three DeLoreans, the A, the B, and the C. The A car was the one that was dressed inside and out. The B car was dressed only on the outside with a bit on the inside. And the C car was cut up in pieces so they could mount cameras in it. It didn't actually drive.
Okay.
When they finished making by the time they got to the third one, they had loads of DeLoreans. But the A car is like the hero car they used in all the films. When it finished filming, they used to use it in Universal Studios with a Doc Brown lookalike. And then it was used in TV commercials, and it was used in promotions and stuff like that. And then it sat on the back lot for decades, just like rotting and falling apart. And at some point, they decided to restore it, and a bunch of fans restored it, and it's now it's in the Peterson Museum in Los Angeles. But the interesting thing is, I was looking back through my archives of my trips to Universal Studios, and I've actually seen that car on the back lot. So I've seen and photographed with my own eyes the A car, which is the main car you see in Back to the Future if you've ever seen any of those films. So there we go.
Did you know at the time it was, or only when you look back at the photos now that you know this fact?
Well, I remember seeing a DeLorean whilst at Universal Studios, and I just assumed it was one of many or not even screen used.
Yeah.
But when I went back to look at my pictures, and then I saw this documentary about the restoration, and they showed photographs of it sitting on the back lot. I was like, hang on a second, that's the same car. And then I looked at them side by side. I was like, look at that! I was in the presence of the A car.
Well, I will say, Tim, you bring up the photo thing. Have you ever thought about this? Have you ever wondered how many photos around the world you're in the background of that you don't know about?
I mean, for me personally, I mean, I'm not boasting because I'm not a famous musician, but tens of thousands, probably, maybe more, because I've played a gig a week,
shows,
gig a week on average for almost my whole adult life. And people take either pictures of the band or people in a pub or people in a thing, and I'm probably in the background to that stuff. So tens of thousands. I mean, I've got thousands and thousands and thousands of photographs on my computer. I think it's like 40, 50,000 pictures, something like that. It's, a lot, I would imagine.
Well, I have seen a lot of people. I've seen people on TikTok. There was this trend, Tim, where they were going back to their photos, and they were like, one of them realized that it was like Blake Lively. Ryan Reynolds' wife was in the photo with him, and they didn't even know it at the time. So it's kind of interesting if you go back through and you could find like maybe there's celebrities in some of your photos, Tim, and you didn't even know.
There we go.
All right. Well, this isn't an episode about photographs, but do not say the Nickelback photograph song. I will hang up. So with that being said, what's the next back song?
Well, this is one. I don't know if we've really discussed this band a great deal. Maybe we have. We've spoken a couple of times. This is from the album "What's the Story, Morning Glory." This is Oasis and "Don't Look Back in Anger."
I mean, we've talked about them mostly discussing the weird whole British, I guess, band thing. You know what I mean, Tim? I feel like that's what we mostly talked about, Oasis. This is a song that was super popular. I don't think in America. Was this a popular song in the UK? I've heard it before, but I don't know that it was huge.
Oh, it was absolutely everywhere. There was sort of in the 90s, there was this whole Oasis versus Blur type thing. You was either Team Oasis or you was Team Blur. But certainly Oasis were everywhere. They were the biggest British band at the time. They really were. And this was a song that was heard continually, even to the point, as you remember from the Rough Justice episode, we had it on our set. And even when we recorded our demo, we made a demo version of it because people used to like it so much. But I mean, it was a huge song.
I mean, it was a pretty big song, and you can still hear it on the radio here, but I just don't think it was as large here. Now, I will say, as we've said many times on the podcast, I'll take Oasis over Blur any day. I stand by that. It
depends. There's a couple of, well, in fact, there's a number of Blur songs I really like, and there's that Blur album. I can't remember the name of it. It's the one with the two horses on the, not horses, greyhounds on the cover. What's that one called? I'm going to look it up, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm not a Blur person, so I don't know. It seems like it's a Blur to me, Tim.
Actually, yeah, it's the Park Life album. It's got the two greyhounds on the cover, and it's got Girls and Boys, Tracy Jacks, and it's got the song Park Life on it. And that is actually a really good album. That would be a good album to recommend for people to listen to. I really enjoy that, and I bought that on CD when it was out. I was not into Oasis at the time. I sort of found it a little bit generic and I didn't really enjoy it. But as time has gone on, I can appreciate there are some really good Oasis songs.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, I could definitely hear that so Sally can wait, that line in the Oasis song, like very predominantly in my brain. So it was played on the radio a lot. I just don't know that Oasis was as big here as they were in the UK.
No, I think it was very much a British phenomenon.
Now, there you go. Because I know everybody was so worried about that. But this is that song for those of you who are trying to identify it. I don't know if is it the chorus where he's like, so Sally can wait, whatever.
Yeah. That
in a very Oasis sounding voice.
Well, of course.
I don't know how else to explain it. Very sad, melancholy. You know what I find funny, Tim? Somebody in the UK is going to be like, Joy, you're ridiculous. But, well, they probably already are. It's kind of funny to me that like Oasis and Blur were popular in the UK because they kind of match like the weather in the UK and the personality of people in the UK. Do you know what I mean? Am I wrong? I'm not wrong, am I, Tim?
Well, I mean, it fits the temperament of the nation, shall we say?
Somebody out there is going to be like, "What the heck, Joy?" But if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. It is
well,
what it is.
like in the United States, we have David Lee Roth era Van Halen. That is a US band. That is a party band. Everything about that is fun and
80s hair and all that
stuff. And then you have Oasis being
I'm glad somebody gets it, but it's kind of like that for me. And I like some of their music, but it does fit very much what I imagine people in the UK to be listening to.
That and Radiohead and Snow Patrol and Coldplay.
Pearl Jam.
Well, Pearl Jam's a US band. I mean,
yeah, but I feel like it still fits what they're listening to in the UK. All right, what's the next one? I stop insulting people's culture.
Okay, so this is from The Pretenders, which is an act we have not spoken about, the amazing Chrissie Hynde. And this is Back on the Chain Gang.
You're right, though. I don't ever think we've talked about The Pretenders.
Yeah, I mean, Chrissie Hynde is such a talent. Singer, songwriter, guitar player. She's been involved with so much great music. She has a very unique voice that, you can, the minute she sings, it's her.
Well, and I think they just have like a very distinct sound. And yeah, the more I think about it, I find it just strange we haven't brought up any of them. Because, I mean, they were popular here in the U.S. Were they pretty popular in the UK? I'm assuming then.
Yeah, moderately popular. I mean, she is a US artist that's lived in England for many years. And the funny thing is, I was listening to a Frank Sinatra duets album today. I had a very interesting morning, lots of different genres of music and lots of different artists, which were not terribly well connected. Just one CD after the other. I was like, oh, okay, that's different. So I had Frank Sinatra's duets from 1993 or something, where he was doing his classic song duets with various people. And I had it on in the background. And then I was listening to one. I thought, that's Chrissie Hynde. And I looked up in the line and I was, because her voice is so unique.
It's hauntingly beautiful.
Yeah, it's Chrissie Hynde.
Well, and that song, Back in the Chain Gang, has been, I'm pretty sure there's a remix of it, right? But there's probably been like 2 or 3 remakes of that song. But hers stands out because she has like, I don't know how else to say it besides her voice is like hauntingly beautiful to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean,
that's the best way to explain it. If you haven't listened to her or it's not something you're familiar with, just give it a Goog. It's worth your time just to hear the song. You've probably even heard remakes of it because this would have been early 80s when this song came out. And I'm pretty sure there was a later version that came out either 90s, early 2000s, pop rock kind of bands or something picked it up.
Very possibly. I mean, it is an iconic song. It's got a very clean, chorusy guitar sound on it as well.
It'd be easy. I don't know how to explain it, but it's easy for someone to pick up and make a rendition of, I guess. There you go. If that makes any sense to anyone, but that's my theory. All right. There's probably not another version, and I made that all up in my head. And if I did, it was my own version, Tim. I wrote it. I did it. I made the arrangement in my brain. Have you ever wondered if you actually remembered something, Tim, or you think you know it and you've just convinced yourself you know it for a very long time of like, you're like, did that actually happen or did I imagine that?
Well, that's the whole Mandela effect thing, isn't it? Where people are convinced about things that never happened. But that's more of a group.
That's kind of groupthink. But they do say that's why humans are terrible witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Humans, like literally, they've proven like out of like you put like 10 people who sell the same event, every single one of them will have a different story. And the worst are children. Children can literally convince themselves of something that didn't happen.
Yeah, and the other thing is that if you've been telling a lie, shall we say,
For a long time.
for a long time, after a while you start to believe it.
And that's what I said. Maybe I just think that happened, but I think there was a version of it. Wow, we are really getting off topic here. But moral of the story is, guys, go listen into that song Tim was talking about. It was a good song. And we're going to talk about another song now.
Okay, so this is from the album Jailbreak by Thin Lizzy. Phil Lynott being the singer bass player of Thin Lizzy.
Hey, Tim, where does a jailbreak take place at?
Well, it's somewhere in this town. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be in a jail. I mean,
I couldn't let you say it without saying it. For those who don't get the reference, that's one of Tim's favorite things, the lyrics where it points out that the jailbreak happened.
Yeah, tonight there's going to be a jailbreak somewhere in this town. I mean, it's not in the supermarket, is it, Phil Lynott? I mean, it's not going to be in a playground.
Not a real big town. There's only one jail.
Yeah, it's not going to be the place that cleans your carpets. No, it's probably going to be in the jail. But I mean, but there we are. That's not the song, but I appreciate you calling back to that one. But this one, of course, is the classic. The boys are back in town.
Which does have remakes of it.
Oh, everyone and their brothers covered this.
Have you ever played it in a band, Tim?
No. I've played Rosalie Cowboy song, but I've never played Boys Are Back in Town.
Really?
We I think in Rough Justice, in the early years of Rough Justice, the classic era, if you will, for our fans who've listened to the Rough Justice episode, we started working it out. But there's lots of twin guitar stuff in it. And this was before YouTube videos and things where it was very easy to figure that stuff out. And I think we got somewhere into the song and then it just never, for whatever reason, it never got finished. But no, I've never actually played it all the way through.
Now, what's weird about Thin Lizzy is they're one of those bands that are kind of they have like a big, I think, presence in American history, like as far as music goes. And you would have, like, there's a group of bands, I've talked to Tim about this, that are very popular in America. And you almost associate them with American culture. But Thin Lizzy is Irish, right?
Yeah, he's Irish. I mean, Scott Gorham is an American guitarist who was one. And they went through many guitarists. Gary Moore was in Thin Lizzy for a period of time.
It was originally established in Ireland, right? That's
Absolutely,
what I got from
but I suppose they're a lot like Led Zeppelin, where they are an overseas band, but they're ingrained in US culture. And I think you're right with Thin Lizzy. I think to some extent that is ingrained in US culture, even though they're not an American band.
We associate them with them kind of like Led Zeppelin, things like that, where it's like that. It's just weird how that kind of transcends. And maybe it's just because they hit a sound or hit a bone that Americans like. You know what I mean? And I'm sure the same thing happens. There's plenty of American artists that don't make it in America and make it overseas. I've heard of that happening too. So
yeah, like Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath. Yeah, people know Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath in England, but they are the band and him are far bigger in the United States.
That's interesting. I would have just assumed. I mean, I don't know. And it's funny, like you said, because he's not. Well, Elton John, many times me and Tim have said this. Elton himself says that America made him. He was more popular in America than he ever was in England.
I mean, he's a huge entity in the UK, but yes, in this country, he is absolutely massive.
Well, I think what he meant by that is he became popular in the United States first, weirdly enough. Does that make sense, Tim? And then it kind of translated back overseas. Weird how that happens. All right. Well, I mean, it's a great song, and now I have The Boys Are Back in Town stuck in my head.
There we are.
And so far, Tim is not. Every song has had back, so he is keeping his promises.
Yeah, they all have back in them.
Because that's how he searched them. All right, what's next?
Okay, now this is an obscure one.
Okay.
And you may have had exposure to it simply through Charlie and me giving this to Charlie as a recommendation to listen to.
Okay.
This is from an Australian band, a big Australian band, sort of a fashion. This is The Beards, who are a novelty band that sing exclusively about beards. They retired a number of years ago. They did 10 years of their beard-related music, and they released 4 or 5 complete albums.
What a weird statement, Tim. Beard-related music.
Yeah, they released 4 or 5 albums. Every one of their songs is about beards or the virtue of having a beard. And their sort of names they had, well, Johann Beard Raven was the singer. John Beardman Jr., Facey McStublington. I mean, they all had these beard names. And as I've said many times before, I've mentioned them on the podcast. They're a
Mhm.
novelty band in the vein of Weird Al and that sort of stuff, but their songs and musicianship stands. And the fact that it's novelty is almost an afterthought because their songwriting is so strong. It sort of transcends the novelty aspect.
That's what you have to do, though, to be a good parody artist, Tim. To be a good parody artist, you have to be a good musician first.
Oh, 100%. And I
Or
think
it doesn't work.
yeah, I mean, they had a band called the Dairy Brothers before that, where they played other music that wasn't beard related, and I think they
Was
did.
it about milk?
I don't think it was about milk. No, I've seen a video on YouTube of the Dairy Brothers, and it was not a milk related band. And I think they did a beard concert just for fun once, and it just became this big thing. And then they've toured internationally with it. And then at some point, they realized that they just couldn't sustain it. You know, all of them were doing it full time. They weren't making money out of it, and they had 10 years of doing it, and then they retired. They actually did a comeback gig. About 18 months ago, and I saw some YouTube clips of it, and it was cool to see the boys back together. But
The boys were back in town.
exactly. But this particular song from their album called The Beard Album. Now I have a copy of The Beard Album. It's very hard to find their CDs. I've got a handful of them. There's two I'm missing, and I look on Discogs all the time, and none of them are available. I occasionally look on Australian eBay, and occasionally one of the two I want show up, but they want so much to ship it. It's like, I like this and I like completing my collection. Do I want to spend $100 US to get this one disc? But anyhow, so I have a copy of the Beard album, and the whole cover is fur because it's supposed to look like a beard.
I love that. You showed us what. So yeah, Tim did introduce Charlie into this band. And so we have listened to it a few times. It comes on Charlie's preference is YouTube music. It's not my preference, but I pay for premium. So that way, if I do watch YouTube videos, if you try to watch a YouTube video without premium, it's almost unwatchable, Tim. It's horrible.
They have degraded the product to the point where it's completely unusable
unless you're going to pay them.
Unless you pay for it. I mean, you watch a music video, there'll be maybe a minute or two of pre-roll ads. Some of them you can't even skip. And then you'll get 2 minutes into like a music video, and then they'll throw an ad in it.
And it'll always be the weirdest ad you've ever seen.
Yeah. And then if you watch something that's 20, 30, 40 minutes long, like a lot of YouTubers post, it's every 5 minutes. It's relentless. It's almost impossible to watch it without premium.
And then you have to listen to your favorite podcaster do their sponsor at the beginning, Tim, already. My HelloFresh code is blah, blah, blah. Then you get 2 minutes into the video, and then you go watch 3 different things about advertising a new TV show, where to get health insurance, and the newest shoes. You know what I mean, Tim? All for you to watch a 10-minute YouTube video.
Yeah, it is terrible. It's absolutely unusable at this point. I mean, I assume it's done to drive people into subscriptions, but for the casual,
it worked.
Yeah, but for the casual person, it is almost impossible to use YouTube at this point. I mean, if you have Chrome or Firefox and you're doing it on a computer, you can install an ad blocker, which will get rid of most of that. But they're talking about injecting the ad server side so the ad blockers don't work.
See, I stream a lot. So my house is a very, I guess would say Google friendly house, Tim. Our light bulbs are all controlled by our Google Homes. I have Google Homes almost in every other room. I have a Chromecast on my TV. You know what I mean? So I stream all the time. So YouTube is pretty much a given for me. And I think I failed to pay them recently, and I just was being lazy and didn't. Do you know what I mean, Tim? I just hadn't went back and updated the card for a few days, and I watched 2 videos, and I was like, I gotta go pay them. This is terrible.
Yeah, it is appallingly bad. But anyhow,
is the name of the song.
Yeah, so the song is called Beards Are Back.
Probably could have guessed that. Is it a song about their beards being back on their faces, Tim?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the beards never went anywhere, but I think it's more just saying, we're back, as in the band, the Beards Are Back, I think.
The boys are back in town with beards.
That's exactly that. No, I will. I mean, this is a good song. This is a good song, and this doesn't fall in the back category. But I would say pull up the YouTube video for You Should Consider Having Sex with a Bearded Man. That is a really good song, and the video is hilarious. But again,
Tim had me watch it.
Yeah, it is really, really good song. It's excellently written. The video is funny.
It's funny.
Yeah. It transcends the novelty.
There you go, guys. That's Tim's recommendation for the week. And he is not getting any percentage from Beard Money.
Well, no. Well, as I said, their website now, all you can buy is digital downloads. There's no merch in there. I should have stocked up on merch when I could have.
Well, you know, it's hindsight's 2020. I was in 50-50, and I was like, that's not right.
Hindsight is 50-50. No, a 50-50 is what they do in a moose lodge.
Or like, I guess like 50 out of, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, guys, hindsight's 50-50. That's my piece of information for you. But I swear, if I ever like run for like office or something, Tim, or try to do something where my name would be out there, that somebody would pull some of our podcasts and be like, "Do you remember that time she didn't know where Egypt was?" And I would just be on the news going, "Shut up."
No, I think we've discussed before. Your campaign slogan will be "A vote for me is a vote for joy."
I've got a great campaign slogan, and really, the average American voter isn't that hard to win over. Anyway, we won't talk about that, but it would help sell me. It really would.
There we are.
We literally talked about this everything but the song for a good 20 minutes. Anyway, what's the next one, Tim?
Okay, well, I don't know if this is the one that you was thinking of, but maybe this is, as they say, a lowball suggestion, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. This is from the album Heart of Stone. This is Cher, and this is If I Could Turn Back Time.
It isn't, but it's a great song. Now, I will say, now, Tim has said many times, he likes Adam Lambert, he likes Queen. He doesn't like Queen with his Adam Lambert, right?
No, it's that combination isn't appealing to me. If you enjoy it, it's fine. Nothing against Adam Lambert, but I'd rather he wasn't singing in my favorite band.
So, and Tim is not saying Adam Lambert can't sing because he knows he can. No, he's a wonderful singer.
His range is amazing. He has a Broadway voice, and he can get so high with that control and vibrato. Amazing voice, but I just
showmanship is great.
Yeah, don't want him in my favorite band.
So, with that being said, his version of "If I Could Turn Back Time" on Cher's Kennedy Center Otters, fantastic. Mm-hmm. One of the best versions of that song. I mean, I love Cher. It's not like, she does a great version. There's other great versions out there. I'm not saying it's the hardest song in the world to sing, but his version, because Cher has a very distinct voice. So It does make it sometimes a little harder for people to reach her level. And he does such a good job because Cher has the ability to sing very low. She has the ability to sing very high and do it all very effortlessly. And if you watch her back on what she used to have her shows, her variety shows, she could do it while roller skating, back flipping off the stage, like literally.
Well, of course.
It amazes me, Tim, because I knew she had the variety show. I know her and, Sunny had a show together and, she did the comedy bits and stuff. But the thing that is surprising, if you have never watched Cher's variety shows, go watch her when she was like with the Jackson 5. And, everybody talks about, I think they did Dancing Machine, which is one of their famous da-da-da, da-da-da, and they all do the robot moves, right? Yeah. And she does it flawlessly. She has great ability to use her muscles physically, not just singing. And she doesn't miss a note. If you've never watched Cher's variety show, that go Google Tim's beard stuff and then look up Cher on the right. No, I'm serious though, Tim. It's so good. Some of it is a little bit cringy when you watch it back now because there's some cringy moments, but she can. She'll literally be roller skating, jumping down the stairs and do a backflip off of it and then hit the note and keep moving. It's just so weird to me.
Yeah. And I've seen some pictures of her recently because she's friends with Cyndi Lauper, and Cyndi Lauper is on her farewell tour because I think Cyndi Lauper's in her 70s.
She also sang at her Kennedy Center Otters too with Adam Lambert.
And she's decided to do a farewell tour and move on to a different phase of her life. And I saw some pictures of her with Cher recently. And I thought, Cher looks great. I don't know how old she is, but she was looking fantastic. She
has to be physically in good shape, Tim. Her breath control is that's the other thing. And Tim and me, I was making this joke the other day. I sent Tim a little snippet of a TikTok I did, and I said, I had to make sure to breathe right before I hit that lower note. And he said, yeah, some of the singing nuances are lost on, the average crowd just being silly. But to be able to do what she does and it doesn't even sound like she's out of breath is amazing. No. She physically is in great shape. So anyway, that's my PSA for Cher. And if she wants to come on the podcast, I'd love to have her.
Yeah, she can pop by anytime. We know we're recording on a Wednesday.
I just need her to say something controversial because she's Cher.
Of course.
That famous clip of her saying, Mom, I am a rich man still shows up on my Facebook feed every day. Do you know what I'm talking about, Tim? The famous clip of when her mom said, "Find you a rich man," and she said, "Mom, I am a rich man."
I have seen that, yes.
Amazing. Amazing. 10 out of 10 share. Also, Adam Lambert's version of If I Could Turn Back Time, if my controversy was better than Cher's.
There we go.
Don't come for me, internet. It's just the truth. He sounds really good singing that song.
Maybe that was a song that was just for him.
I don't know. I didn't call Cher to ask. So anyway, how much time do we have left, Tim?
Oh, we got time for a few more.
Okay, you hit me with your next one, but no, you have not said the song that I was thinking. I will surprise everybody at the end if it does not come up.
Okay, so this one is Steve Winwood, and this is a song "Back in the High Life Again."
I love Steve Winwood, and I love, for some reason, recently I feel like his music has kind of resurged, and they've used it a lot in like mashups and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've heard a lot of obviously Higher Love was a big one, right? But it's usually the Whitney version you hear a lot. But I feel like his music, like it's being used a lot more in commercials and TV shows. I don't know. I feel like I've just got a resurgence of him recently, and he deserves it because he has a wonderful voice.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, 20 years ago at this point. There was that dance track called Call on Me, which had the refrain from Valerie.
Yep.
Yeah, and apparently he re-sung the vocal for them so it would fit better. And the reason, well, he did it because he liked the track and he thought it was cool and he wanted to get
cool.
Yeah, and plus he would then get a performance royalty too.
Well, I mean, you might as well, Tim. But he has a really great voice. And I mean, he's 80s, like Tim said, he fits right in my CVS playlist. I realize that, everyone. But I do like Steve Winwood. And he's an earbug. Every time you hear him, you'll be hearing him for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, I've always liked the song Spanish Dancer by him, which I think wasn't a single or anything. It's an album track. Yeah. But that's a track that I really enjoy. But of course, he's worked with Blind Faith. He's worked with Traffic. I mean, there's so much good music that Steve Winwood has been involved with. And of course, he is playing Hammond organ on that famous video of Prince playing While My Guitar Gently Weeps at the Rock and Roll induction ceremony, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
Well, and then wasn't he also in that one band that was like Ginger and something?
Well, yeah, that's Blind Faith that had Ginger Baker on drums.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just saying, I know he's worked with a lot of different people. I don't know if he writes music, though. Does he write his own music, Tim?
Yeah, he's a songwriter, guitar player, keyboard player, singer.
So he just does it all, is all you're saying? He's one of those people.
Absolutely.
What's next? He did open heart surgery?
No, that would be Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden if you want to get involved in Renaissance man type stuff.
Well, to be fair, I wouldn't be surprised if you told me tomorrow Brian May was like a heart surgeon and he just got it like 2 days ago somehow.
No, he's an astrophysicist that saves wild animals.
Well, you know, I went to work today. Walked my dog, I'll have you know.
Yeah, I was an IT middle manager. There you go. Saved somebody the 3 hours they were missing on their paycheck. It's similar. Saving lives, Tim. There you go. I ordered some phone cases and someone needed a keyboard for a Dell 5570 laptop. I mean, there you go. That's what I did.
I always think about this, and I don't know if you, but sometimes I just have to remind myself that we're not doing open heart surgery here.
No, but I mean, you know, like in my life, I work in the healthcare industry like you do. And yes, I ordered a keyboard for a laptop, but if I didn't order that keyboard, it wouldn't get replaced. And then the person who needed it to put in notes wouldn't do it. And then they wouldn't be able to offer services. You know, it all goes down the chain. Oh, no,
I get that. But what I was thinking, though, is, well, I mean, if people get paid, they're not going to work for you and you're not going to have a company. So the payroll I do, the hiring, all that stuff is important. Even sadly, the terminating people sometimes. But sometimes, though, when people like freak out and like act like the world is on fire, I just have to remind myself I'm not doing open heart surgery right this minute.
There we go.
There you go. That's my PSA for the day, everybody. Don't know what that has anything to do with Steve Winwood, but I do like his music. And would you define him as being yacht rock, Tim?
I think he's bordering into the yachting territory, but I'm not a big fan of the yacht rock genre, purely because I'm not into genres, really. I just like music I like.
It's true, but I remember, I think of Family Guy, when they did the yacht rock episode, he came up a few times, and I was kind of like, I don't define him as yacht rock.
Yeah, I wouldn't define, well, yeah, maybe.
I mean, I guess, but wouldn't that be like every kind of poppy 80s person if you really wanted to get down to it, if you're going to define it that way?
Yeah, I know that Steve Lukather from Toto was asked about Toto being yacht rock, and he's like, cool.
Really?
Yeah, that falls way into that category, especially things like Africa and things like that, yacht rock territory. And he was asked about it. He said, call it what you want. He said, we're making loads of money. He said, you stick it on whatever you like, call it whatever you like. I don't care.
I mean, I guess some of their music could be yacht rock, but that's not what I would define it as. Anyway, we'll have to do a yacht rock episode, and me and Tim will analyze this better. All right, what next song do you got for us?
Okay, so this is an act I think we've never spoken of on this podcast. This is the Everly Brothers, and this is Walk Right Back.
I mean, I love the Everly Brothers, but I think you're right. I don't remember ever speaking about them on the podcast.
No, they are a vocal duo, singer-songwriter vocal duo from the 60s, I think.
Yeah.
And they were performing into the 70s, 80s, and I think in 90s as well. I think we've lost one of the Everly Brothers at this point. But I mean, their sort of strong vocal harmonies almost define a generation.
Yes, they're very much so. No one's like, if you hear the Everly Brothers, they're the Everly Brothers. You know what I mean, Tim? It's very apparent. Their harmonies are wonderful. They are really brothers. One of them did pass recently. I listened to them a lot growing up. Now, I will say this Walk Right Back was one of their very first songs, like probably early 60s, you're talking here. So I don't know how popular it was, but I mean, I've definitely heard it. And I feel like it probably could have been like radio banter.
Sure. I mean, if I think of the Everly Brothers and I think of the songs I know of them, this is certainly one that would come to mind almost immediately.
Yeah, I guess you're right. They didn't. I don't know how long they were like making music though. Did you say that they had songs in the 90s too?
I think so. I mean, they were touring. I mean, they may have been releasing token albums, just because, but they weren't having hits. But they were certainly touring, and they were out there, and people were enjoying them playing and enjoying listening to them.
And then didn't they played with like a steel guitar, right?
Well, they were steel strung instruments. They famously used to play Gibson Hummingbirds or Gibson J200s.
I knew they had a very distinct guitar thing.
Yeah, and then later on they had the Everly Guitar Company that was making Everly Brothers guitars. Yeah, they said they played Gibsons, and then they migrated into this Everly Guitar Company. And in fact, Paul, who's been on this podcast, one of his relations actually ordered one of those and has an Everly Brothers model.
Were they expensive?
Everly. I mean, it was stupid expensive. I mean, in England, US-made guitars are expensive anyway, but this was a custom-made, this, that, the other, and I think this was like a 40th or 50th wedding, 40th or 50th birthday present to himself or from his partner or something like that, and it was very expensive. But it was. I played it; it sounded amazing.
Well, I do know that they also there was some connection with their vocal arrangements, and they designed vocal arrangements for other songs too, not just their own. They worked with some other people, including it might have even been like the Beatles. But don't quote me on that, everybody. Don't come for me. I just know they have done vocal arrangements for other people because they're very specific in the way they do their harmonies, and they really feel that. They fit that kind of wall of sound thing really well. They're a great way to define. If you don't understand when me and Tim talk about Phil Spectrum or we talk about the wall of sound, I think the Everly Brothers are a good example.
Yeah, 100%.
There you go. That's my, not that you guys asked, but there you go. There was something else I was going to say, but I lost it. Oh, you said if you were going to think of an Everly Brothers song, this is one of the first ones that come to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to think of anything else, and I think you're right. This probably is the first song that would come to mind. So there you go.
There we are. All right. Well, I've got two more for you, and I don't know whether they will hit the song that you're talking about, but you can reveal that at the end of the episode.
Okay.
So this is the Eurythmics from the album Be Yourself Tonight, and this is a song, It's All Right, Baby's Coming Back Now. This is a very early Eurythmics song. I don't even know if it's a song that you would necessarily know.
Not off the top of my head, no. I don't think so. I mean, I may have heard it, but I definitely wouldn't know like what it sounds like. But I mean, it probably sounds like the Eurythmics if I had to guess.
It's all right.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that song.
Coming back.
Yeah, I've heard that song.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't know it off the top of my head.
No,
How
it's not.
It's
not Sweet Dreams or any of those sort of songs. It's one from the very beginning of their career.
But how popular were the Eurythmics in the UK?
They were a big act. I remember, I mean, as I said, Annie Lennox would pioneer that androgynous look long before anyone else was doing it. And, her amazing vocal sound. And of course, Dave Stewart's songwriting and her songwriting and his production. I mean, they were a huge UK act.
I mean, they were pretty popular here, but I will say they're definitely radio hits. Like you said, Sweet Dreams and stuff like that. That's what I kind of distinctly remember. But Annie Lennox is known for being such a great vocalist and a distinct vocalist.
Yes.
Like she has a very distinct voice. And it's kind of interesting. Sometimes I think about this when it comes to, people talk about not always the best musician is the one that becomes the most famous. Do you know what I'm talking about, Tim? And with singers, I feel like sometimes having more of your own distinct sound can almost be more important. You do have to have, obviously the basics to sing, but having a distinct sound that you could market, especially in today's age, I feel like is almost more important than your range.
Sure, because I mean, like you were saying about the Pretenders, Chrissy Hind, she has such a unique voice, and Annie Lennox is exactly the same. It's her immediately, and there's lots of singers, as great as they are not necessarily that distinctive.
Yeah, I think, and it does seem to work a lot with females, I think, too, especially to stand out. But yeah, the more I think about it, I mean, even think about somebody like Blondie. Blondie has a very distinct voice. If Blondie starts singing with that, I call it high pitch. It's not necessarily high pitch, but you know what I mean? She has a very high, natural, almost like full sound to her voice. Like she can sing very high and it sounds very full. Like it's got layers to it. Heck, look at Dolly Parton's voice.
Sure.
Very distinct. Very distinct. She sounds like she's telling you a story every time she opens her mouth. So anyway, yeah, I think that like when it comes to music, it's always interesting because they'll be like, well, this person's super talented and they never made it. And I don't know if it's the spark, people talk about some people just have the it factor, the spark. Sometimes I think it's marketing and how marketable you are with your distinct sound. Look at somebody like Britney Spears. She was marketed with that little kid sound for so many years that she couldn't even get out of it.
Yeah.
There you go, guys. If you're trying to get into music, find your distinct sound. Wow, what a revelating piece of information, Joy. No one's ever heard that before. But it seems to be true. And I feel like that's true with Annie Lennox. That's what I was getting at.
100%. All right. Well, let's close this episode out, the back episode. I could not mention this. I have to mention this song. I couldn't not mention it. So this is Brian May, the song Back to the Light. We've spoken about this many times, but I had to have a notable mention.
So this was not what I was thinking, but I knew it was going to make it into the episode. I mean, we've talked about many times. I was surprised at how much I love this album and actually really love that song.
Yeah, and I've mentioned before, there was a time traveler video where 2021 Brian May is jamming with 1993 Brian May, and they've like put video superimposed them together on stage and stuff, and it's look it up. It's very clever editing, I will say.
It's really good. If you haven't seen it, Tim is right that you should. Now, Tim, what I was looking for, what did not make it in this episode, and I know why it didn't make it in this episode because it's probably not in your song catalog. Yeah. It's Backstreet's Back. All right, that's what I was looking for.
No, that is not on my list. I think the way I listed them in iTunes, it was probably in there because I have it in my music library, but no, I just.
There. That's all I was looking. Well, it might be because it's everybody parentheses Backstreet's Back. You know how like sometimes it's labeled like that or whatever?
Yes.
Could be the labeling, but that is when you said back songs. That was the first thing that came to mind was Backstreet's Back.
Well, there we are. I failed you, Joy, with my back songs.
No, it's kind of fun. That's kind of what I do when you do these episodes. The last two, I've told you what the songs were, but as soon as you give me the topic, I try to think of whatever song I think is going to make it onto the list. It's like a little game I play with myself.
There we go.
And if people in the audience are going to start catching themselves doing it. All right. Well, do you have anything you'd like to leave the people with, Tim?
Just be extra kind to everyone that you meet.
I agree with Tim. Bye.
Bye.